But yeah, me
Yeah.
and Tanaka, we can go all day. I don't know, Valentine. You have anything you want to that's burning that you want to ask the man?
Uh, kind of. Um, well, I think it's probably going to be led with a statement to say, I think well, you mentioned Leicester to London. I think, first of all, the road infrastructure in England is probably one of the best. So you could feasibly commute those distances, and they've allowed for roads that allow, people to go to and from. So that's why that is possible, unless if you want to take the train. Um, to the point of EVs in England, it obviously Zimbabwe the infrastructure is not there. But I was reading this report that they said mini grid systems, like what you're saying with independent power producers, could be the way to make EV charging stations and all that possible, even from Mshakwachu. So
Mhm.
ZESA should be empowering people like DPA and bring other independent power producers and making licenses easier to obtain for people who want to
Mhm.
build solar infrastructure, to then say, okay, listen, if you want to build it, fair enough, but we only have one condition: you increase our charging station network. You have a quota of, let's say, 10 for every installation you do, that you can service a certain distance. But the problem is I don't think ZESA will be receptive to something like that, because, like what you're saying is quite right. EVs are so far ahead in the future of many people's minds, because again, it's changing the culture, changing the culture of, yeah, it's going to take you 20 minutes, like the example that you gave. Is that someone will still queue, like if fuel becomes a problem again, someone will still wait in a queue for 4 hours instead of going for the EV option, even if we have charging stations that are more available than, I think it's the three that DP has in a right now. It's changing that mentality. So how do you approach, besides the authorities, how do you approach changing the mentality of people to say, no, EVs are a viable option? You just have to see them in this way.
Look, I think I've been preaching this for the past 2 years when I started even bringing hybrids. Everyone right now is buying a Honda Fit hybrid. I want a Honda Fit hybrid. Honda Fit. They're not understanding the concept of owning a Honda Fit hybrid. They just think it's saving fuel, but there's a lot involved. It's the same thing with an EV. To change a person mentality from an EV is dependent on price. Zimbabweans love new things. I remember there's one conference I attended, and I said this: a Zimbabwean would rather buy a light bulb before they buy a candle. Then the people asked me and they started laughing, like, why are you saying that? I said, look, we are fast in our minds. Our country is just, we're just unfortunate that our economy has been inconsistent. But if it was consistent, like remember the time of the US, people would actually have bought these cars more than my fuel savers. You'd actually see a lot of these electric vehicles. Because just to think of it, Tinashe Mtarisi, he bought his Tesla how many years back? But that time people didn't understand the whole concept of these electric vehicles. They were like, it won't go anywhere. It's gonna die. So we've got this belief of saying if we get something, it won't last, but we want it. Like recently, the iPhone 12 came out. I've seen, I think, 100 people with that phone. So I don't see, well, any much work needed to to change the people's mentality. I think it goes down to pricing and education. Those are the two things. Because from the cars that I've sold, I don't want to lie to you, I've sold almost 20 electric vehicles and about 10 plug-in hybrids. From the people that I sold to, they had no clue about electric vehicles. But the moment I told them, look, these are the benefits. If there's no fuel, you can charge your car at home. If there's no ZESA at your house, you can just easily drive to a service station and ask to plug your car for even 10 minutes, 10 or 10 minutes. You can drive anywhere. You can do your runnings. And secondly, an electric vehicle helps you plan your day. You don't waste time, because what's important is time. In transport, it's not necessarily about the distance, it's the time you take to do your delivery. If you understand the whole concept of daily delivery, when you order your food, you expect it to be by your house maybe in 10-15 minutes, isn't it? It's not about saying I just want my food here. You calculate the time. A truck, if it leaves the border at 8 o'clock, you calculate the time it should be here by 7 p.m., 8 a.m., and then it should be here at 7 p.m. So it's all about time. EVs will save you a lot of production time as opposed to a petrol engine. Because now you gotta go and wait 4 hours for fuel. Yes, fuel is available at the moment for US, but how many people can afford the fuel for US? That's the other thing you have to look at.
But then again, if we're looking at fuel for US, when EVs get popular, this is going to be saying, all right, we're going to have to reprice or change the pricing structure for electricity because we can't let you do what you can do with a car, with a petrol car, with an electric vehicle car. So that even will then push away independent power producers who want to create these valuable mini grids and say, okay, listen, if you want to control and regulate the price, it's not attractive for us to do this. I think that may be one of the problems why there hasn't been such a rush in Zimbabwe for
Okay, let
independent.
me. Yeah, this issue, I think we had an argument about it. But look, for your information, ZESA is willing to give in because look at ESCOM, right? In South Africa, I think there's two independent power producers, similarly to even in the UK. There's the national grid, and then there's other small little companies. There should be a cap, like on fuel. There should be a cap on on electricity to say if it's going to be 18 cents a kilowatt an hour, that's the cap. If you want to charge 15 cents, it's up to you. If you want to charge 20, if you want to charge 17 cents, it's up to you, but you cannot surpass 18 cents. Like how fuel is. I think that would be the only way it will work.
But the problem with electric vehicles, or the quote unquote philosophical argument, is that the electricity generated from those vehicles comes from thermoelectric power stations and nuclear power stations, which again, nuclear power stations are probably the biggest polluters that people don't really talk about. Because for those elements, for those isotopes to then degrade to being harmless takes an innumerable number of time. So this really solving the problem, especially for Zimbabwe, where, okay, if we're going to say we're going to use solar, that's fine, but we're going to need to supplement that production with thermoelectric, with thermal power station. So on an environmental standpoint, it doesn't really balance out.
With Zimbabwe, look, it's not quite difficult. Zimbabwe, we can do hydroelectric power, and we can do solar power. That's why you've looked at DPA. DPA has encouraged all these industries, all these service stations to actually go solar, because at the end of the day, nuclear and coal, look, they're big money makers. Those things, and oil also is a big money maker. It's not going to be very easy, as we are saying, that you can just eradicate the fossil fuel petrol heads. Because I was once a petrol head. I loved petrol head, but I also enjoyed the technology that came with electric vehicles. So what's going to happen here in Zimbabwe is looking at even the renewable energy policy. It's all about renewable energy, solar. It's all about hydropower. So I feel there's going to be more of that than nuclear or coal. So which means electric vehicles will have a chance. The other thing is what we've been encouraging a lot of people is when you buy an electric vehicle, like myself, I was telling them, look, I'm going to install a free solar system for you, probably 5 kVA, whereby your house is now only using solar, right? And then you've got that net metering system. And then whatever you're left with, you're taking back to the grid. The grid is paying you back. You can charge your vehicle. So meaning to say you are not suppressing the grid for them to actually say we need to have more power grids. If you understand what I'm saying, like Tesla, the concept Tesla, okay, Tesla was selling the power separately. Then I spoke to a guy from Tesla Dubai. I said, look, let's come up with a concept whereby the person buys Model S plus the power. So meaning to say you're not going to suppress the grid to start saying, no, we need to generate more power using thermal or using hydro or using whatever other source of power. But the other issue that is, I think, will be a problem is the recycling of the batteries, because they've got a lifespan, these batteries, in which there's a company in Norway. They've actually come up with a way of how you can recycle the battery without harming the environment, because lithium batteries are very dangerous. They're explosive. So they can just give in any day after their life cycle is gone. So this company has come up with the concept whereby when your battery health is at 40%, you have to take it out. They'll recondition the battery, and then you put it back in. You've got a new battery. You're moving on. That's why probably most manufacturers are not really keen on pushing EVs too much, because let's say, for example, Valentine, you buy yourself a 2018 Nissan Leaf. You're going to keep that car for the next 15 years because the only thing you're going to do is change your battery. You're not going to buy a new car. You're just going to go back to Nissan and say, Nissan, my battery is flat. I need a new one. So it's quite tricky at the moment. It's quite tricky.
And that's actually an interesting.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay. Oh, so I was going to say that it's actually an interesting point that you bring out there, because I think it's a Chinese electric vehicle manufacturer called NIO, NIO, if I'm not mistaken. They seem to have a similar service whereby uh, you buy the car but without the battery pack, and the battery pack is hot swappable. So you're pretty much just renting the battery pack. If it runs out, you just go to the service center, they pull it out, chuck a new one in, and you're good to go. So isn't it, um, couldn't that be one of the breakthrough things when it comes to the advantages of EVs, in the sense that there is that genuine worry that the life of your car is pretty much the life of the battery of that car. So if I'm able to easily just swap out the battery and put in a new one, then it pretty much means this vehicle, I can potentially have it for, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 years, just swapping out batteries and putting another one.
Yes, that is correct. That is
Mm.
correct. That's what's going to happen. I think if you look at if you've been following General Motors' new concept for the next 20 years, it's called Generation E. What they are saying is they're completely taking out fossil fuel cars completely. So by 2035, probably General Motors won't be even making a petrol engine or a diesel engine. Currently, I know Mercedes is no longer exporting certain vehicles to Africa, certain diesel vehicles to Africa. They're now doing plug-in hybrid and petrol, including Zimbabwe. I think Zimbabwe you won't be able to import from the dealer themselves a diesel engine. I'm
Mm.
not yet sure on that one, but I heard Mercedes made an announcement regarding that they're going to stop, because Mercedes, they recently launched the EQA and the EQC. The EQC is actually making its way to Zimbabwe. There's a guy I'm very close with. I convinced him to buy one. He's a big guy. He loves Range Rovers and all this stuff. I convinced him to buy an EQC. So he bought the car. It's currently in shipment. It's on its way. So maybe sometime in March it'll be here. So it'll be the first fully electric Mercedes in Zimbabwe, probably in all of Africa, because I haven't heard anyone in Africa that owns an EQC.
Yeah, they're not here yet.
Yeah.
Not even.
So we are doing quite well, Zimbabwe. Even Tesla, we were one of the first countries. That's why I said our regulations are somehow good, because it's an open market. They allow people to buy cars anywhere they want. So it has put us on a platform whereby we are innovating things, but it's not being publicized properly because we've got so much bad publicity in some things. But I'm happy that international bodies and everything are recognizing that Zimbabwe is actually spearheading the use of electric vehicles, especially when Zera launched their promotional vehicle, which is electric, and that's a quite big thing, because that's a regulatory authority that regularizes a lot of things. They've got an electric vehicle, so that's a big step.
But wouldn't a bigger step be convincing the government to now replacing a majority of its fleet with EVs or plug-in electric hybrids? Because they have the biggest fleet of anyone in the country. So if they start saying if they make a commitment, or if you can get them to make a commitment and say by 2025, it'll be 40% plug-in hybrids or electric, will be major progress. Zera's one vehicle is good, but it's a far shorter jump than where we need it to be. Because if they start using them, incentivizes them to then put in the charging station.
Yeah, I've been informed that ZESA and CMED are also on the verge of acquiring quite a lot of electric vehicles. But as you know, government follows a certain procedure, a certain protocol. And just to think of it, the age group in the government, they're those guys that are so used to the cruisers, to the Hiluxes. So imagine telling him to go and buy a $66,000 Hyundai Kona as opposed to a Toyota Hilux Dakar. It's something that that's where the mentality you're saying is. It'll be difficult for government vehicles. It might be difficult unless a legislation is put to say, look, each government personnel has to have at least an electric vehicle and a fossil car vehicle. It's fine that way. But to tell them go full electric,
I'm not saying they should go electric at the high level. I'm sure that the fleet at the high level is probably much more limited. But I mean, the Zessas, the Zimpos, the Tel ones, the Net ones,
yes,
those frequent cars, those people who run around
especially,
town.
yeah, especially my thinking was Zessa was supposed to be one of the first people to actually acquire electric vehicles, especially for their team that attend faults, because usually you've had complaints of power surges and all that stuff, and they'll say we don't have fuel to go attend to the power surge. And another parastatal I would think will definitely need to have is ZRP. ZRP will need to have those small, even the 100-kilometer range ones. They're quite fine for them, because they also complain when there's a criminal report. They'll tell you we don't have transport.
True. And
better than buying the BMWs.
Oh, for sure. And I think one of the other issues that might be slowing down progress is they'll also be considering service centers in which these vehicles can get service and backup from. And if I remember correctly, I think Nissan announced something in line of them having an EV service center in Zim. I don't know if my memory serves me correctly there, but I think like big players, big companies and corporates with these large fleets will probably have the budgets to switch to electric vehicles. They are not quite confident in the dealerships and service centers being able to provide adequate backup for those vehicles, and they just decide to go with what's there.
Okay, you've heard about BYD, isn't it? That currently came into Zim.
It sounds familiar.
The Chinese EV company. They've got a dealership here. They've got backup. They've got everything. Look, I feel like what I said with my colleague, the Master Tech Taurai. If he manages to pull through with the school and train a couple of technicians, backup won't be something that's very difficult, because that's the most important thing. Backup is, buying a car, buying a TV, buying whatever is very easy, but backup, warranty, everything, all these things, we cannot depend on South Africa, because South Africa at this moment, they don't have approvals even for backup. If you can take your Nissan Leaf, they'll tell you we can't touch it because Nissan hasn't given us approval. But here in Zimbabwe, we're fortunate enough, we've got a technician who can say, look, I can touch it, I can fix it. So like ourselves, we're actually planning on building a workshop that can host at least 12 cars at a time, and that can do servicing. Because these vehicles, you service them after 40,000 Ks. Like my one that I drive, when it came in, I serviced it, and it actually told me my next service is at 45,000 Ks. So now imagine 45,000 Ks, to me, that's like 2.5 years. The only thing I have to worry about is tires and brakes. It actually tells you on a computer, it tells you that your next service is in 45,000 Ks. And trust me, 45,000 Ks is like 2.5 years. So yeah, mainly backup. It's like, for example, what can I say? Apple. Before the iStore, whatever, iClick came in, when you had an Apple iPhone, all this stuff, where did you go? Obviously, you went to private technicians. That's what we're going to depend on. Manufacturers, I don't even trust manufacturers, even if I've got a brand new car. To be honest with you, I don't trust them, because manufacturers, they don't believe in sorting out the problem. They believe in avoiding the problem. In Zimbabwe, they believe in saying, look, if the car has a problem, let's replace. And sometimes it's not necessarily needing replacement. It probably needs a repair, if you get my sense, because they make more money from replacements than repair. So that's why people opt for private technicians.